Minister, when you came before the House last week with your version of events, I told you were caught out at that time. Caught out concealing donations that weren't declared at the time in 2016. Caught out in relation to, despite the fact that you had information back in 2017 of the use of the company van, that you didn't do anything about it. Caught out when the journalists contacted you in 2020, in November of that year, and you said your team reviewed everything and that there was no need to make any adjustments, that everything was okay. And it was only when SIPO actually wrote to you that you created this narrative here to reverse engineer the numbers to make it all seem plausible. But the question I put to you on 4 occasions last week was the one you could not answer. The information you gave this House was even how many tickets Michael Stone bought off you in a national draw, but you failed to tell us that he paid to put up your election posters in not just 1 but 2 elections. And the reason you couldn't answer that question, because you knew at that time that you were caught out again. So can I ask you a specific question? In 2017, who made the allegation in relation to the use of the company van, Michael Stone's company van, in the erection of the posters? Can you answer that question? Also, when you had repeated requests by media in November of 2022, when you said you carried out a review, who carried out the review? And at that stage, did you know of the involvement of Michael Stone in relation to postering?
Thank you, Deputy Doherty, for your questions. I think it's very important to be clear when you use the word donation. What exactly we are referring to here is an inadvertent corporate donation that I've now declared and will return to SIPO. But the donation that you use repeatedly, at the heart of this is the issue of postering. And the donation that you refer to is the commercial value that is attributed to posters that I did not know were being paid for and that I assumed to be voluntary. So every time you use the word donation, which you're correct to raise, I will make the point back that this refers to postering that I assumed to be done on a voluntary basis. The 2 questions that you put to me there is who made the allegation passed on the point in 2017. It was, I believe, at that point, a journalist. I've been unable to determine who. And in relation to the review that I initiated from the end of November across December, which took some time to do, at that time I believed, but it took me some time to establish, that all the support that I received had been on a voluntary basis.
First of all, I asked you, who carried out the review? You actually informed the journalists, at least one journalist, that you carried out a review and you didn't need to change your declaration. We now know that that was not true. We now know that 2016, that you got a donation of postering in that campaign, and again in 2020. So who carried out the review, and how were you able to issue that response in November, another cover-up in relation to this political donation? And in relation to 2017, when it was brought to your attention, what did you do when somebody pointed out to you that the company van was used in erecting your posters at that time?
So thank you for recognising that the donation that we are referring to here is the putting up of posters. It's posters that I assumed was happening on a voluntary basis that has created an issue that I now must be accountable for in relation to the return of my SIPO forms and expenses, which I have done. In relation to who carried out the review, I asked those who were involved in my constituency organisation and my team who've been involved in the campaign. And as I said, up until recently, and I made a return in relation to my expenses for 2016, I believe that activity had been provided on a voluntary basis. At campaign time, we put up many hundreds of posters in Dublin Central. I assume they were all put up on a voluntary basis. That's the nature of the issue. So just to clarify this. And then just to answer the question that you put to me then regarding the action that I didn't take in 2017, that is one of the many issues that I hold myself accountable for, Count Corla. I look back at that point, and at that point what I should have done in 2017, when I became aware of the issue, is I should have amended my electoral expenses at that time to take account of the use of a commercial van that had at that point a value of €140. It is one of the examples of my assuming that activity had been provided on a voluntary
respect,
basis.
Minister, now you're talking down the clock. Well, let me ask the questions. Because you told the media after your review that there was nothing to see here. But you're after telling the House that during the review that you've identified that Michael Stone put up the posters in 2016. You're also after telling the House that there were some in your team that recollected that Michael Stone made a contribution in 2020. Now, Pascal, please come clean on this here. How many posters did Michael Stone put up in 2016 and 2020? And don't take the mickey out of this here and tell us that he only put up 75 polls. Tell us, how many posters were you putting up?
Minister.
Thanks, Deputy, for your two questions. Firstly, to be clear, it was only as I initiated a more thorough review of the 2016 campaign, in the aftermath of receiving further contact, that it became apparent to me that those individuals had been paid, but they were not paid for by me. They were not paid for by Fine Gael Dublin Central. No, I acknowledge the point. The key issue here is that that point had constituted the declaration, and I accept that point. The key mistake that I made, which I've acknowledged to the House this evening, was an acknowledgement that I had assumed they were all done on a voluntary basis.
Six men, 3 vans, 5 nights. How many posters did they put up?
In relation to how many posters that were put up, I'm afraid I have not been able to determine how many posters were put up. But what I have been able to determine,
you're just
what I have been able to. So, Deputy, I don't know if you're interested in my answer or my head. But what you're going to get is the best answers that I have available.
And last week there, you wouldn't answer any of the questions because it is a cock and bull story. And you've been caught out time and time again, not just in terms of accepted undeclared political donations, but a cover-up that has gone on week after week.
To determine,
hold on.
All the information I have,
please, Minister, hold on. Please do not attempt to shout down the Minister. You've asked him a question, let him answer it. And he will. Let the Minister answer, please. Minister.
As I said, I have not been able to determine the number of posters that were put up, but on the information that has been supplied to me, I've been able to determine the commercial value of the labour that was involved in putting up the posters and the commercial value of the vehicles that were involved in doing it. And they, Count Corla, form most of the revision that needs to be made from an expenses point of view. But as I've indicated to the House, a further revision needs to be made with regard to what I now accept was a corporate donation that I've now acted upon with Cycle.
Thank you. We need to move on. Deputy